Before we dive into actually adding dynamic routes to our project, I want to showcase the Django documentation because it's really good documentation, and if you ever have a question or need to reference how something's working, it's great to jump in and read the docs. And I wanted to walk through how they explain this URL and view, and also how they explain some dynamic URLs. So here I am on this page where they talk about how Django processes a request. So this deals with URLs and views, so I have our project over here to the side. So when a user requests a page from your Django site, the first thing that happens is Django determines the root URL conf module to use. So this is just what Python page, what Python module, what Python file. And it's by default this urls.py file in the project folder, in our config folder. So we have that set up right here. So it determines this module, then it loads that Python module, it loads this page, and looks for the variable URL patterns. So we have that variable right here, URL patterns, which is a sequence of Django paths. A sequence of Django paths right here, if I can say that word, sequence of Django paths. Then Django runs through each of these URL patterns in order, so from top to bottom, and stops at the first one that matches the requested URL. So if I went to mysite.com/about, it would load this file, look for URL patterns, and then run from top through bottom through each path looking for about. And once it matched the specific URL, then it imports and calls the given view, which is a Python function or class, as you know. So it matches about, and then it calls the about view. And the about view is passed an instance of HTTP request. So if we go into our views file, we can see this is this request that we get passed in. But it also could get passed any positional or named arguments. So these are used within the dynamic routes. And if no URL pattern matches, so if I went to /sunshine, it would go through these paths and nothing would match, and it would handle that error, typically returning a 404 page, which does not exist. So now let's look at an example with dynamic routes, passing variables in the URL. So here we have an example, urls.py file, which is the same as this file right here. And they specify 4 paths, /articles/2003, /articles/ this weird notation, which is how you specify passing a variable. So it's square brackets, the type, an integer here, and then the name of the variable, so year, and then articles, a year, and then a month, and then articles, year, month, and then a slug, type of slug, which is a newspaper term and is basically just a URL-friendly name. So instead of spaces, it'll have dashes. And the example request here is a request to /articles/2005/03. And what path do you think that matches to? /articles/2005/03. Do you think it matches /articles/2003, articles integer year, articles year month, or articles year month slug? If you guessed the third one, you're correct. So Django will go through all the paths. It'll say /articles/2003. That doesn't match because it's missing the 03 at the end. /articles/any integer doesn't match again because it's missing that 03 at the end. /articles/integer year/integer month matches perfectly. And then it would return and call this views.month archive, this month archive view. But when it calls that view, you can see that it passes in not only the request, but also the year and the month. So that would be like in our about if we also had year equals 2005 and month equals 3. And we could use these numbers, these variables within our function to do whatever we want with them. In this example, it could probably look up the articles from 2005 and the third month and just return those. But I just wanted to showcase how the Django docs work and how they are a useful resource if you're stuck and need to look something up, and also how these dynamic URLs work and how variables are passed into the URLs and can be used in the views. So in the next video, we'll actually dive in and implement a new URL in view and use dynamic routes.